from our home marina after a 36-hour leg from Key West, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to share just a little backstory. So Rob, let's talk a little bit about how we got into sailing and how long we've had our boat. Why don't you give us a little backstory there, and then I'll give my version.
Your version? Okay, first of all, this is a 39-hour leg. We're about 36 hours right now. We're about 2.5 hours from home. 3.5 hours from home, so about 39 hours. What was the question? How do we get into sailing?
Yeah.
How did we get into sailing? Well, let me think, see if I can remember. I was looking at sailboats, and I don't remember why I was looking at sailboats, but then I realized that sailing is way more affordable than I thought it was, and I'd always wanted to sail. So then I started looking at sailboats that might be in our price range to see if it's something that would be worth doing or having. Just doing some research and realizing that it was attainable for us, so I talked to you about it.
Okay, so I'm going to interject because I have a very distinct memory. When we first moved to Florida, which is going on 4 years ago now, I remember saying, absolutely, we're not buying a boat. By the way, we're not buying a boat. And so we had decided as a compromise to join the local Freedom Boat Club, which was great. We could take a boat out whenever we wanted, and they had a variety of small boats that we could tool around in. So we were having fun with that. And I remember one afternoon we were out at Beer Can Island.
Yep.
And this was just before COVID. We were out at Beer Can and we saw a gorgeous sailboat about the size of the one we now own. And it appeared to be manned by a single crew member. The captain of that boat was alone and he had his dog with him. And he pulled that boat up, anchored just offshore, and then let his dog off onto the island briefly. And you were admiring that boat. We both were. And it was at that moment that I knew, oh crap, I think we're buying a sailboat. And that's when your interest really peaked. It was the first that I had heard that you were interested in sailing. I, for one, have never really contemplated sailing until we got into it. But that is a distinct memory for me. So you're telling me, of course, that you've wanted to sail your whole life?
I have. And it's interesting to me that you remember so much about that sailboat. I do vaguely remember that sailboat. I would not say that sailboat is what piqued my interest, but it may have been. It is what got me researching sailboats, though, because I remember having this conversation about how do sailboats sail upwind, and I didn't know the answer to that, and I wanted to know the answer to that because I'm a geek. So I started looking into it, and actually now that I'm thinking about it, that is kind of what started this whole thing, was me researching how sailboats sail upwind.
Okay, so we've owned our boat now about 2 years, is that right?
In 2 months it'll be 2 years. Yep.
Okay, so why don't you share how we found our boat and then brought it home?
Okay. Well, how we found it is kind of a cool story. So I had seen 2 boats that I wanted to look at down in Punta Gorda, and I gathered up my dad. Because he's always wanted to sail too. And we drove down to Punta Gorda, with your permission, to look at these boats. And we ended up looking at 3 boats. I've never even been on a sailboat before, so I didn't know what I was looking for. Really, the interest was, I wonder what it looks like on a sailboat. I wonder what sailboats look like. That's how little I knew. And so we walked through these 3 boats. The smallest one was a 30-foot. The biggest one was a 36-foot. we weren't interested. Nothing that piqued my interest. So Dad and I left the marina and went and had pizza. And while we were sitting there eating pizza at this little diner in Punta Gorda or Fort Myers or whatever it was, Burnt Store. Yeah, Burnt Store. Well, whatever. Anyway, so we're sitting there eating pizza, and I was on Boat Trader, and I saw this boat that was in the same marina that we were just in. So I called the broker in order to tell him, hey, you didn't show us this boat. Can we look at it? He never called me back. So I called the broker for this boat and said, hey, I know it's really short notice, but we're from out of town. We're sitting here eating pizza. I was wondering, is there any way we could look at this boat like now? And he said, sure, where are you eating pizza? I'll come pick you up. And he did. He came and picked us up, and he brought us to this boat, and Dad and I stepped on it. We went down the companionway. We looked around, and I looked at him and I said, I think this is it. And he said, this is a beautiful boat. And I, of course, told the broker that I had to discuss this with my wife, which I did, and now we have a boat.
Okay, yeah, great story.
Oh wait, I didn't finish your question though.
You didn't. The next step is, of course, how do we get the boat home?
Yeah, so how do we get the boat home? Because remember, I didn't even know what a sailboat looked like inside, let alone how to sail one. And I just told you that this whole thing came about because I didn't know how a sailboat sails upwind. So I went to University of YouTube, and I watched all the videos and read all the things I could online. And the initial plan was, my boss's boss used to be a sail instructor in Miami, and he was going to sail this boat back with us, and he ended up not being able to make it. So I took all of my vast knowledge that I learned by watching videos and reading all the articles I could read about sailing, and we got on this 35-foot sailboat, and I got it out of the slip and out of the marina. We fueled it up, put the sails up, and we sailed for the first time ever with no instruction. And we sailed it all the way home. So, of course, after that we went and got formal training and certifications, but that's how we got it home. And we didn't sail it again after that until we got our training. But 2 days. It took 2 days. So we sailed up to Venice, and we anchored out. No, we ended up in a slip. We tried to anchor out, but we ended up in a slip, and then we sailed it the next day home from Venice.
Right, I remember that trip well. So Ryan was with us, and I have some photos from that trip with him looking just a little anxious the entire time. Poor kid. But he was brave enough to come with us on our initial sailing expedition.
Hey,